Hey y'all, welcome back to the Late Night Vision Show. This is episode 17, and I am Hans. We got a kind of a goodie bag full of topics that we're going to talk to you about today. But first we're going to bring in our co-host and gentleman that's usually in the great state of Texas, but today he is not. Jason, where are you calling from, bud?
I am actually out in the Rocky Mountains in northern New Mexico with my wife and kids. I've been out here for a few days, going to be out here for the rest of all this week. So going to spend about a week and a half out here, and I'm going to tell you something. It is a very, very rough life out here in this high 70 degrees, low 40 at night. I'm just hating life out here. It's tough. So
You're killing me. And I saw you, and I saw a picture of you holding some type of funny looking fish that I've never even seen before.
Yeah.
So what are you doing out there, man?
We're doing some fishing. Yeah, that was a wild German brown trout. We've been catching a lot of rainbow trout, but I snagged one of those, and it's been fun. We've been coming out here my whole life. I'm third generation coming out. The little town's called Red River, New Mexico. I know some of our listeners are going to know where that is. It's really popular with a lot of Texans and Oklahomans, and so we're just hanging out here, having a good time. And so anybody who's watching on YouTube, watching this podcast on there, you're not going to see my ugly mug on there. And if you're listening to this, if we have any audio trouble, I'm actually sitting in my pickup truck out here because I didn't want to take a chance on being loud in the house or something. So I'm sitting out here. But again, it's just a terrible...
Waking a kid up.
Yeah, and it's a terrible, it's just tough suffering through this cool air out here, But no, I know I'm rubbing it in now, but I've already told the kids, I was like, y'all are gonna hate it in a week. Y'all are gonna.
Yeah, I can't complain because I'm usually the person on vacation and having to call in remote or working on the road or something. But talking about YouTube,
right.
Talking about YouTube, like you said, if you watch this on YouTube, you usually see a split screen of Jason and I on the podcast. And I was kind of thinking about that, man. So you're still going to see half of the screen is going to be me, but the other half, I'm trying to think of a meme that we need to put your face on. And I was kind of thinking, you're in the mountains. What about doing photoshopping your face on the movie poster of Brokeback Mountain? What do you think about that?
Let me tell you. Well, I've never seen the movie, but I'm sure I've never seen this movie, but I'm sure you have the DVD. But I'm definitely going to approve any artwork for this podcast. But hey, I will tell you something. This is funny. I brought my my Pulsar Helion XP28 thermal monocular, and I got to goofing around with it out here. And I'm going to tell you something. I was out here tonight. It is unbelievable how far you can really see.
Right.
As y'all know, in East Texas, I don't have a lot of opportunities to see out past, 500-600 yards regularly. But man alive, I'm looking across these mountains and ski slopes and open meadows on the side of there. I'm talking like half a mile away more. It is crazy. So it's been fun to get to use that in some different terrain for sure.
Well, my wife and I have been up to Colorado a bunch, and I always say next time I go, I'm going to take my thermal because we usually stay in a little valley and there's mountains on either side, and just to be able to look into the mountains with the thermal, I always thought would be. I really want to see a bear. I've never seen a bear in person, and every time I go, I'm like, man, I want to see a bear, but. Gosh, with that Helion, there's a good chance you might see something wandering around up in those woods in the mountains.
If it's a bear, I want to see it at 500 yards. That's my range for bears.
500.
Yeah, 500, not 5 yards, 500.
Well, you definitely, if you get a video of something like that, you definitely put it on YouTube. The video of a bear with the thermal, that'd be awesome.
Oh, Don't worry about that. You'll definitely hear about it. No doubt. Well, Hans, look, I think we've got a good show tonight. A bunch of random different topics and things that we've you and I want to talk about, and we've got a listener question. So why don't you go ahead and tell them what we're going to talk about?
Yeah. So really, towards the end of the show in our second segment, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the most common questions that you get from people when they buy a new thermal is really how do you sight it in, and not necessarily the mechanics of the scope, but really what's the setup, meaning the target, what can you use that will show a good image that you can sight in at, and Jason and I use a couple of different methods, and I know there's a lot of people using a lot of different things, but we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But I also know, Jason, we got some things coming up. You have an update on the LRF that we've talked about previously. What's going on with that Pulsar Trail XP50 LRF, and that's a laser rangefinder for people out there that don't know about it. But what's the update on that?
Yeah, this LRF, it's beginning to become like a unicorn. You can't ever quite find it, can't ever put your hands on it. Hans and I had a demo from Pulsar back a few months ago, and we both used it extensively and did some review videos on it. And the story's been since that unit was announced, January 2018 SHOT Show, that it was going to be coming out in the summer. And then that kind of got pushed back, and it was like July, August, and it just
Mm-hmm.
keeps getting pushed. So I spoke to Pulsar last week. My rep says it looks like there's a possibility this is going to get pushed back even further, possibly, uh, maybe even, November. Could be later than that. So at this point, again, that's anything can change. There's nothing official, but it looks like it's going to get held up some more. And don't know all the exact details, but it looks like there could be some issues with actually getting it imported into the U.S. right now. There's a lot of restrictions when it comes to importing and exporting these type of things, and I believe it may have something to do with the laser and how powerful it is. So not exactly sure there. It's not an issue with production. It's not an issue with the unit, anything like that. It's actually, from what it sounds like, going to be a problem getting it here. So they're trying to work through some of all that stuff, the federal paperwork and what have you. That's at least my understanding, what I've been told. So we don't have any good timeline. And honestly, the way it's sounding is you're going to have to wait on it if you really want it. And at this point, I've had other guys who are like, I want it, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait. And a lot of people are just going ahead and saying, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and buy something else. I'm not going to take a chance and maybe miss a whole coyote season this fall,
Right.
or miss the best 4 or 5 months of hog hunting in the fall and the winter, hoping this scope actually comes out. And again, I
Right.
think it's going to, as far as I know, nothing has changed there, but they're definitely, it's going to be delayed. And when it comes in, uh, everything that we're hearing says it's going to be in extremely limited quantities. And I think it's going to be very, very hard to get your hands on one in the first
Mm-hmm.
several months. So I guess I'm not discouraging you if it's something you really want, but what I am telling you is be prepared to wait and don't be upset if you don't have one in January of 2019. If you're
Right.
willing to wait it out. If not, I'd go ahead and make my decision and make another purchase before things get crazy in October, November, and it'll just stay busy all the way through all the cool months.
Yeah, I've had some people ask about the LRF, and I've tested one, and they mostly it was people that are shooting at longer ranges and a lot of coyote hunters, and
Hmm.
there is some interest in there for sure. But I tell you, if it's hard to get, that means that everybody's going to want it all at once. That's the way it seems to
That's
work.
exactly.
If it's hard to get something, hey, but also else, I know you got some 536s, the FLIR PTS 536s in. You got a big shipment in. I've been testing it out. I've been hunting with it for the last couple of weeks, and we did a full review last week on the podcast. I put out a video on YouTube of a full review of the FLIR PTS 536. I shot a hog a couple weekends ago. It's probably one of the best videos as far as detail that I've ever captured. But it's
Hmm.
nothing like yours, Jason. If anybody's ever wants to see a hog charge video, you need to go to Outdoor Legacy Gear YouTube. Check out Jason's hog charge. I mean, that hog came at you and dang near knocked one of the tripod legs off of your where you were shooting from. Mine wasn't near that intense, but I shot a hog about 40 yards away, and he ran right towards me in my direction and dropped him with a headshot. Ended up rolling a couple times about 15 yards in front of me. And I'll tell you, I always wondered when it happened to you, and I see it happen all the time. You always wonder, how am I going to handle myself in that situation? And I'm going to tell you, um, it all happened so quick that I didn't feel like, and you tell me if this happened to you, it happened so quick. I felt like I didn't have time to be nervous or even
Hmm.
think. All I could think about was putting that dot on his forehead for that second shot. And I remember feeling confident on that second shot that I was going to drop him. But it tell you, it's like I didn't have time to be nervous or anything else.
Yeah.
And yours was way more intense than
Yeah.
mine was.
Well, I've seen the video of yours, and it is very good. And that hog was definitely heading your direction. And I know that everybody likes to argue about, was he charging you or was he just accidentally running your direction? It's like I say, I don't care what his motivation was. He's still running
Right.
fast towards me, and he was definitely doing
Right.
that to you. And I tell you, it's the same experience. That hog that was running towards me, I did have more time. I got a lot of shots in, and it was the same thing as you. It was oddly calm, but it's kind of one of
Mm,
those times where you don't have a lot of options, and
right.
and I know it's the same situation for you. People say, well, did you think about running? Did you think about, honestly, you realize that if you pull your eye away from that scope, you can't see anything. Your best bet is
Exactly
going to
right.
be looking through that scope while you can still see that hog. And so,
Yep.
you did good, and that was a very good shot. It was much better than most of my shots. I said I wasn't too nervous, but I was, you know, shooting like a little schoolgirl at him. So I don't know. You manned up and got the
Well,
headshot there with the 308.
I tell you that with that 4 power base magnification of that PTS 536, I felt like I could see how long his eyelashes were at about 30 yards. So I felt like I was playing a video game almost when he was running. And I'm gonna tell you, I don't think he was charging me
Right.
specifically. He was definitely running in my direction. But like you said, it really at that point it doesn't matter. He's coming at you, and you got to do what you got to do to put him down. But
That's exactly
yeah,
right.
so we got that video. I got the video coming out this week. Of last week was the full review of the PTS 536. This week is going to be nothing but hog kills. So we've got a bunch of them thrown in there and get a chance for everybody to see the 536 in action. But hey, before we get our topic, I want to give you a little bit of good news. I kind of got green lighted on a big purchase that I might be making here
Wait a minute. Wait a
in
minute. Wait a minute.
pretty soon. But what?
Well, hang on. I'm
Well,
interrupting here. Green
yeah.
lighted from who? I mean, I need to know more about this.
Well,
Tell us about who's wearing the pants here. I
well,
just need to.
Well, we all know who wears the pants, and that pretty much, and in everybody's household. But I'm going to tell you, when I say green lighted, and this is from my wife, but when I say green lighted, that means she didn't say no. So that's what I mean. She didn't say no. But I'm looking at getting in. Everybody's gearing up for hog season this fall, winter. Everybody's getting all their gear together. Everybody's getting their scopes and their rigs together. Man, I have talked myself into getting a one of those electric, you know, uh, like kind of like a golf cart, but just a electric ride that I can, you know, set up with lights and everything, and have a 2 bench seat set up and go out there and roll around on the trails in stealth mode. Just kind of sneak
Mhm.
up on them in that golf cart and hop out and shoot them instead of doing all that walking we've been doing lately. Um, but I
Well,
know you got a side by side. A lot of people were getting side by sides, and you know, and there's people that can sneak up with them with that side by side. But man, I'm thinking, get me one of those electric golf carts decked out and camo it up and put some big tires. Man, that kind of sounds good going into hunting
I,
season, doesn't it?
I'm thinking it sounds a lot better than all that walking you made me do the last time I was up at your place. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm giving you the green
exactly.
light too. But no, I think it's a great idea, and I think more and more guys are doing it. I know you've been using a four wheeler for a long time. I used to use a four wheeler. I've got a Polaris Ranger with the 2 seats, but I use that on my farm. My issue is that for hog hunting, it's just really, really loud. And there's
Right.
times where I've got a text camera or a cell camera that will send me text or emails when I'm getting pictures, and I've got one set about a half a mile down in the woods, down in a hardwood bottom, on a corn feeder, and I'll get hogs down there. But gosh, I mean, if I drive down there, they're going to hear me coming a half a mile away. I mean, even if I'm just puttering along, that
Right.
Ranger's loud. So I think the idea of an
Yeah.
electric golf cart is going to be good. I think you're going to stealth mode up there, and you've got good roads. You're not going to be busting brush.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be
No, no,
awesome.
yeah, and even those in those log sets in thick woods, those side by sides seem to be even louder than they normally are.
I
Because it
agree.
just echoes
They
off the trees.
they do. They really
But
do.
yeah, I you were talking about my four wheeler. I 4 years ago I bought a brand new Kawasaki Brute Force 750, and that's what I do all my running around on when I hunt and bait up holes. Well, this is kind of why my wife has been reluctant on letting me get anything else, because I bought it brand new and I spent brand new off the showroom floor, spent a lot of money on it,
Mm.
and had less than 2 hours on it and sunk it in a lake.
What?
in
I
the
don't know this story.
Yeah,
What did you do?
yeah, I sunk it. So me and my buddies, our big thing back in the day was just riding four wheelers, going to four wheeler parks and rides and riding around. And I bought a brand new four wheeler and took it out for the first ride. And I was going through this mud hole. Well, I didn't know that it was dug out as far as it was from other people going through it. And I just sunk that front end down into the edge of the lake, and it sucked water all up in the motor and everything else. And
Uh,
my I turned white as a ghost, because I just thought about the $10,000 that I just basically burned up
uh,
in trying to go through this lake. And I changed the oil. I had to change the oil 7 times in it. This was before I told my wife what happened. I had to change the oil in it 7 times to get all the water out of the motor. And I tell you what, um, I I did that. I took it to the my guy that works on my stuff, and he said, "Man, there's nothing wrong with it." And I got lucky. I really got lucky, because I thought that I had just completely messed up the motor in this brand new, four wheeler, and there's no way I'm going to
so
be able to
you're
get
that
anything
guy.
else. So
You're that guy that we
I
all
am that
talk
guy.
about. Like, who would buy a brand new four wheeler and go out there and sink it 2 hours later? Now I know. His name's Hans. I did not
Yeah,
know yet.
yeah, I know. And I was just the whole time I'm thinking, how am I going to tell my wife that I just
Mm.
ruined a $10,000 four wheeler?
Mm.
And luckily, when she showed up the next day, I was out uh, changing oil in it, like I said, 7 times, and finally got the oil cleaned up. And there was no sand or anything in the motor, and it was running good. Runs great to this day. So, man, I'm gonna tell you, Kawasaki. This
Yeah.
isn't really a plug for them, but you bury one in the water, you clean it up, clean the water out of it pretty good. It'll keep on trucking. But anyway, we're going to get right into our topic for today, and that's we just want to catch up. And this is part of our show. We're gonna talk a lot about thermal hunting, night vision stuff, and really this show I think is geared not just for the people that are out hog hunting every day that know the ins and outs of their scope, and they're wanting to learn about advancements in technology and new scopes. But our show is also for people that are just beginning in night vision and are just getting started. And really, those are some of the most common people that are reaching out to people like Jason and people like me that are putting out content and talking about scopes on a weekly basis on the podcast and doing YouTube videos. We get a lot of questions from people just starting out. And one of the biggest questions that Jason and I get is, "Hey, I just bought this thermal scope, and how do I sight it in? What do I need to set up to be able to sight this rifle in?" So, Jason, I'm gonna let you both of us do something a little bit different. And there's a lot of different methods out there, but why don't you just run through real quick on your setup when you're setting up the rifle as far as preparing a target and all that. What are you doing to make it really go by as quick as easy as possible?
Sure. Well, I want to thank Jim. He's one of our listeners, and he brought this up. He's actually brought up some other great show topics that we've used, and he sent us a message and asked us to talk about this. And Jim has got experience with thermal, but he said it's something that he had some questions about, even though as an experienced user. But I do get this question a lot from guys that I sell scopes to for the first time. I was like, how do I sight this thing in? What do I do? And it is tricky. And so, for those of you who don't know, some of you may have never even handled thermal. Essentially, when you look out there, if you put a piece of paper up, a paper target, all you're going to see is that square target. You're just going to see that piece of paper there because it's all the same temperature. There's no difference in the temperature. So, you've got to do something to be able to see where your bullseye is. And there are a lot of ways to skin this cat. And I don't believe that any of them are right or any of them are wrong because a lot of different methods work for a lot of different people. Basically, the most common method is going to be using hand warmers. And what you're going to do there is you're just going to take those little disposable hand warmers that you shake up and they get hot. I hear more people probably use this method than anything else. You take those. Also, I actually prefer the toe warmers because they're a bit smaller. And you just shake it up. You get it warm. You put that in your target right there on the center of it. Use a thumbtack and back up. And when you look through there, your scope sees that hot hand warmer, and it is going to be a lot warmer than the ambient temperature normally, and so it'll just be glowing and you'll be able to shoot at it. I'm going to tell you a little trick that I do a lot of times because here in, or not here, I'm out in New Mexico right now. I guess I'd do something different if I was here. But back in East Texas,
Yeah.
it's a lot of times I'm sighting in, it's so hot. The hand warmers work, no problem. But a lot of times, because it's already 100 degrees or close to it, they won't glow
Mhm.
as much maybe as I want them to. So I've got a little trick that I use, and I take a rubber surgical glove and I just cut one of the fingers out. I take an ice cube, shove it down in there, and then use the thumbtack and put that in the center. And our ice maker, makes the long, kind of skinny ice cubes that are about the size of your finger. I really like that because it fits down in that glove well. And now, instead of having like the hand warmer that's probably 2 inches by 3.5 inches, instead of having a target that big, and that they actually kind of blooms out larger than that as that heat is glowing down there. So it'll, your target will actually be a little bit bigger than that. And what I like is that single ice cube gives me a much smaller target, and that helps me. For me, get it zeroed in a little closer and a little quicker. Just aiming at that smaller target. And so that's the method I use. Now there is something that I'm going to tell you. It's really almost cheating, and it is an item that I actually sell in the store. I have not talked about this thing. I haven't put a video out on it. To be honest, I never talk about it, and I should. I've got them sitting on the shelf in stock, but it's called a ammo cam, CAM, and it's in a ammo can, a plastic like an MTM ammo can. And what it basically is it's got a camera on it. It's got a small little built-in Wi-Fi router. It's got a battery pack. And you take this thing, you set it up in front of your target, you connect your smartphone or your iPad to it. It's got a free app you download, and you can connect it, and you've got a live view of your target. And you can go back. There's a couple different models. The model that I sell will go back to I believe, I don't have it in front of me, 200 or 300 yards. To be honest, I've never tested it over a couple hundred yards. Haven't ever needed to, and it works awesome. It is great. You just connect that I use my iPad, connect the iPad app to it, and it works great. So now what happens is that, and I'm not going to get into the whole details of how every single bit of this thing works within the app, but basically you can see every shot you take, and you can watch it live, but there's another way of doing it where it actually shows each shot, and your last shot will be blinking. and so you can't miss where you shot. And that just takes out having to use a um, spotting scope or binoculars or something like that, and it is almost like cheating. I can sight in extremely quickly using this thing. And so anyway, with that said, that's something I really like to use, but I know not everybody, if you're not, shooting a lot, it's probably not worth it for a lot of people. But if you're the guy who has everything or you like to shoot a lot, it's a really, really cool little device. And I think it's just amazing kind of where the technology is now. But that's what I like to do. I know there's some other stuff, using reflective tape that I've heard guys use, using pieces of metal and heating them up. A lot of different tricks. One thing I get asked a lot is, can I use a laser bore sight with, a thermal? And the answer to that is yes and no. You can't see the laser where it's, hitting. So you go, well, I guess I can't use it. But what you can do is, and sometimes, you've got to get in a barn, a shop somewhere, depending on how good your bore sighter is. You may not be able to go out in the bright sun and still see it. But if you can back up, and let's just say you're in, again, a metal building, a shop, a house, something, put that bore sight on some fixed object, and then look through your scope, and then move the crosshairs to that fixed object, so you can get close even though you can't see the laser through the scope. You're just getting it on a fixed object, moving your crosshairs to there. But anyway, that's kind of my methods. I mean, I've got more I can say on that, but Hans, go ahead, and I want to hear what you do, because to be honest, we've talked about it a lot, and I don't know what you're doing right now. I know you've used a couple different
Yeah.
methods.
Yeah. So, and to talk a little bit about the ammo can, I have used it, and really, I sight all my rifles in at 50 yards. So it saved me from having to get up and walk over to the target every time, basically to look. So
Mhm.
that was the best thing about it, was I didn't have to get up and walk 50, 100 yards by the time you walk there and back every time you take a shot. So that was the best thing about the ammo can. But really, what I've done, and what works best for me, and what I is easiest for me, is I get just a big cardboard target like you normally would, and I get a piece of tinfoil, and I usually cut into about a 3 by 3 inch square. And if it's a warm day, while I'm driving over to my shooting range, I will put that piece of tinfoil in a cup of ice, and just let it sit in there on my way over there. And I'll pin it up to the cardboard target when I get there. And to me, it works great. Now during the winter, I will, I'll do something opposite. I'll put it in something warm, so the temperature variance is quite different than the cardboard that I'm putting it on. But I just use a piece of tin foil, cut it into a square, and man, that works just fine. So, I think today, and on the show, for all of you that just listening and kind of wondering on when you do get your thermal, or if you're using a different method and you want to try out something different, I think you've heard a few good ones right now. And Jason, correct me if I'm wrong. I think they actually sell targets that you can buy that are specifically for thermals. Isn't that correct?
They do. They sell targets.
Yeah.
I just be honest. I have not stocked them. They are not cheap, and they work. And there's maybe some new stuff coming out. I read about some stuff
Yeah.
several months ago. Some stuff that was in the works that was going to be coming out that looked really neat and was supposed to be more affordable. I haven't really heard much about that. I actually think it was back at SHOT Show, so I don't know what's happened there. But the traditional thermal targets that have been out there, in my opinion, are, I don't want to say they're overpriced, but for what they are, as much as I'm citing in, I just can't justify it.
Hmm.
It works for me. Now I do know, and this is something I guess we're kind of overlooking. If you're shooting a traditional daytime scope, a lot of times you are able to see where you hit. You can look through the scope and go, oh, I'm over 2 inches left. And if you use something like one of those black shoot and see targets that knocks off, it's got yellow, green, pink, orange underneath it,
Hmm.
really easy to see with your scope. You can't do that with your thermal. Now, depending on what you're shooting and what you're shooting through, sometimes you can shoot through like maybe a plastic, one of those uh, plastic boards like political signs, that sort of thing are made on. Sometimes you will be able to see your bullet hole that when it went through there, that heat,
Hmm.
it heated up that hole. And sometimes you'll be able to see it for a few seconds or maybe even 1 second and goes away, but it's not long enough for you to make any adjustments. So that is an issue. Now, if you get to a point where, so with that said, if you're going to make those adjustments and you don't have something, like that ammo cam to be able to sit there and stare at it and, go, okay, this is exactly where it is, or maybe even a spotting scope, you're going to have to just make some generalized adjustments. I probably need to go over 3 inches and up 2 inches. But if you're way off or maybe even just a little, but you really want to dial it in, if you're willing to do the work, what you can do is you can go down to your target and put another, hot or cold object. So let's just say I've done this before, especially when I was kind of having some trouble with a thermal one time sighting it in. I would, I've got my bullseye is an ice cube. And then when I would shoot, I would walk down there. I'd shoot 2 or 3 rounds to make sure I had a group. I'd walk down there. I would take another ice cube, another, finger of a glove, and I would put that over the actual point of impact. And so now when I go back and I look through there, I see my bullseye and I see my point of impact.
Hmm.
And this is the trick for sighting in, any night vision scope. And I'm always telling guys this. It doesn't matter if it has one shot zero or not. All you're trying to do is move your crosshairs to the point of impact. And that's it. So
Yep.
if you know where that point of impact is, then you just go straight to it. The one shot zero can help with that. A lot of times I don't even use it if I'm in a hurry. I will just, and maybe if I do if I'm fine tuning, but I just go right over there, watch those crosshairs move, boom, point of impact, save it, shoot
Hmm.
again. And so again, I know if you can't see your point of impact, you've just got to estimate it. But that's what I was talking about. If you really want to, if you're going to use Han's method with the tenfold, which I really didn't know that's what you were doing now, you could do the same exact thing. But what it is going to require is it's going to require you to walk down there and do it. My advice at the end of the day, no matter what method you use, do not be in a hurry, especially if you're new to thermals. Um, don't do what I do so many times, and Hans knows this. I guarantee you, he's tired of hearing me talk about this. It just seems like I will always get some new scope in, whether it's a demo or just something brand new, hot off the press, and I'll get it on like a Thursday or Friday, and UPS delivers it, and I just can't wait to go get it zeroed because I want to go hunt with it. And I get out there either 30 minutes before dark, or if it's this time of year, I'll go out there at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 100 degrees. I'm sweating to death. I'm in a hurry, and if it just turns into
Yeah.
a comedy of errors, if you get in a hurry,
Right.
you're going to have problems. So my advice is to just
Right.
don't even go out there if all you're going to have is 15 minutes. Just make sure you
Right.
got plenty of time. Go slow and steady, and make small adjustments, and make sure you're good to go there.
Right. Well, all good points. And if you have any questions about this, if you have any other suggestions, please let us know. And also, please call us because we would like to hear your voicemails, any comments about the show, any topic suggestions moving forward. You can call us at 903-833-4461, or you can also email us at thelatenightvisionshow@gmail.com. But we'd really love you to call us and leave us a voicemail. We good chance we'll play your call on a future podcast. We won't use any of your contact information. We'll only use your first name, but we definitely want to give you a shout out. And also, I've got some, like I said, the video for the PTS 536 hog kills is coming out this week on YouTube. And you can find that on YouTube at Hans East Texas. That's HANSETX. And you can also check me out over on Instagram at Hans ETX. But we appreciate you joining us this week on the show. And like I said, if you need to ask us a question, please reach out to Jason and I. And Jason, where can they find you at?
Sure, you can find me at outdoorlegacygear.com. outdoorlegacygear.com. You can always find all of our products and everything there. But if you want to call and talk to me about a scope or have questions about something, if you need advice, if you a lot of guys, what they want to call me for, and this is I love doing this, is they say either I don't know any idea what I want, or they'll say, hey, I've kind of been looking around and I'm thinking about this scope and this scope, or I've got a price range of this. And I love being able to get it narrowed down to 2 or 3 scopes
Mm-hmm.
and then getting to kind of hone in what works best for your exact situation, the terrain you're hunting, the animals. I enjoy doing it. It's kind of a challenge every time to figure out what works best for you within your budget. So feel free to call me, 877-350-1818. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Just search for Outdoor Legacy Gear on any of those places. I know that Hans and I have been talking for a while. We keep saying we're going to do giveaways. We are. I just tell you, I was on the phone today, working with a company that is, going to be working on some stuff for me, some T-shirts, caps, some other promotional stuff. And all that stuff always takes longer than you think it's going to. And we both
Mm-hmm.
want to get it done right. So we are not making that stuff up. I was working on it today, finalizing orders, and that stuff's going into production. So we are going to be doing some giveaways soon, and I'm excited about that. But Hans and I both appreciate everybody who listens to the show. We both love it when we get to talk to people who say, hey, man, we listen to the show, we like it, or give us suggestions, whatever. And like he said, call us, email us at thelatenightvisionshow@gmail.com. And anyway, you know how to get a hold of us. So for Hans and I, we want to say thanks for tuning in every week, listening to the show. We hope you enjoy it. We enjoy doing it. And we just can't wait to see y'all again next week. Thanks again.